Welcome to the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alicia Shelly. If you missed last week's episode, then boy, you need to go back and listen because Dr. Lester gave us a talk about all the things we need to know about GLP-1s and all the things we need to start doing into our lifestyle to get back on track. But today, I wanted her to talk to us a little bit more about the endoscopic weight loss procedures. It's not something we've talked about so far in the podcast, and it's something we should know as far as other options that we can use. So if you did miss last week, let me introduce Dr. Lester one more time. She is a quadruple board certified physician in internal medicine, gastroenterology, obesity medicine, and nutrition physician specialist. She has founded the Gut Theory Total Digestive Care, where she specializes in uncovering the root cause of excess weight. She customizes weight management through evidence-based nutrition and anti-obesity pharmacology and innovative, non-invasive bariatric endoscopic weight loss procedures. Welcome to the podcast again, Dr. Lester. So good to see you again this week.
Thank you. Happy to be back.
For those that may have missed the last week, would you mind just sharing a few tidbits, a little bit more about yourself?
Of course. I am Janice Lester, originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and went to college in Atlanta, med school in Texas, and then sort of came to DC for residency, fellowship, and decided to stick around here. Got interested in nutrition and obesity medicine during my fellowship and did some training at Brigham with a mentor there and got completely sort of like engulfed in bariatric endoscopy, nutrition, and obesity medicine. And I was like, all right, I am doing this, and ended up doing a nutrition fellowship after that and a bariatric endoscopy fellowship in Madrid. And then because there wasn't a space for me anywhere in what we actually have in like academic medicine really or private practice, I decided, you know what, let's try my own thing. And that's when I opened my practice, Gut Theory Total Digestive Care in Washington, DC, to be able to treat patients sort of from all the things that I learned from all of this training. So yeah, that's my crazy story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Just like, it's so funny, the different paths that we go through as physicians to get to where we are. So thank you for sharing as well. Well, can you just tell us what are the most common endoscopic weight loss procedures?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So currently there is the gastric balloon, and this one actually has been around for years. And so it had gone through a couple different iterations of the balloon to get better and better. Initially, when they came out, they would sort of drift into the small bowel and cause obstructions, or they would sort of burst. So they had some issues about 25, well, much longer than that, 30, 40 years ago. And then they got better and better and better. And there have been over, I think, 200,000 balloons placed sort of worldwide. Yeah, they're super popular in Europe and in South America as well, but also in the US now. So that's the gastric balloon. That's really, really common. The other one that has now been around for, I think it just had its sort of 20-year anniversary, is the endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty. And this one is sort of to mimic the surgical sleeve that most people have heard of. But with this one, endoscopy means through the mouth. So we are going through the mouth with the scope, and it's just a change of what we put on the end of the endoscope. So instead of it being a normal endoscope that you guys may have had for heartburn or for abdominal pain or something, this time we have a suturing device on it. And we're putting little tiny sutures in the stomach to sort of just pull it on itself to create this sort of smaller, more tubular shaped stomach. And this came about when people were saying, if the surgical sleeve cuts that part of the stomach off and it's sort of gone forever, so you forever will have an abnormal anatomy, maybe there's something that we can, this was, trying to just make the stomach smaller, but from the inside. So imagine pulling something from the inside to kind of scrunch it up. And so when they get done, with the physician gets done, it says about 70-80% smaller than your normal stomach. And it's creating this sort of tubular shape to sort of mimic what happens in surgery. Except with this one, it takes about 30 to 40 minutes. You wake up and go home the same day. There's no incisions on your abdomen. It's reversible if need be. They can go back in and cut the sutures out. I've not had one patient that ever wanted that, but you could. So less side effects. You don't need sort of long-term sort of vitamins and supplements like you need with bariatric surgery. And it's sort of just a shorter recovery. So that's why it's really, really sort of a nice option. And these procedures sort of came to play because we recognize that despite bariatric surgeries being really good options, they've gotten really good and they're not as near as invasive as they used to be. Problem is that that despite, them being covered by insurance, found that only about 2 to 3% of the people who are eligible for these procedures actually have them done every year, despite them reversing high blood pressure, despite them being so much safer. People just, whether it's for a stigma, whether it's because they're afraid of surgery, they've heard somebody that had a bad outcome, whatever the reason may be, they're afraid of having these procedures done. And so the idea was, what can we do for these people that still need something, that diet and exercise has not worked very well for them? They still needed something a little bit more. Or for people that anti-obesity medications didn't work for, right? Or people who are in that category that they may be in the obesity class 1 BMI, but maybe they don't have a comorbidity like high blood pressure or diabetes or sleep apnea, so the insurance won't cover it. So there's all these people in the middle that sort of don't have help until, insurance will say, oh, you have to be sicker to have this, surgery, right? And so that was where they kind of came from, to sort of help this subset of the population. And those are the most common. There's other ones that are out. One of them is called the transpyloric shuttle. And this one is one that sort of creates a gastric outlet obstruction. It's like a little thing that sort of falls into what's called the pylorus to block things from emptying your stomach. And so therefore making you feel full. And it sort of is able to move throughout back and forth, back and forth. There's another one that's called the Aspire Assist. And this one, I always laugh when I tell people about it, because Stephen Colbert, back when he had his Daily Show, made an hilarious sort of skit about it. But it's sort of like a peg tube that is placed in your stomach and it's attached to this device. And after people eat, they have to sort of attach this device to it to eliminate about 30% of their meal from their stomach. So it's, it has that ick factor for a lot of people. And a lot of people were saying it's like another form of bulimia, but it's not. There were studies that showed it actually did help change people's sort of eating habits, because it made you slow down to chew. Otherwise, your little tubing would get clogged. But it also made patients sort of be able to see sort of what they were eating. So they would see, oh, I had pizza, now look how greasy this output looks. I don't want to eat that anymore. They're actually able to see what they're putting into their body. So it's able to change your mindset. So although it has the ick factor, it was really, really effective in a lot of people. And then there's a lot that are coming sort of down to pikes sort of that are easier. One of them is called the Pose. And that one's sort of been out for a while. It's approved in other countries, not FDA approved just yet here, but it has that similar idea of sort of making the stomach smaller with a suturing sort of device. And there's other ones that are coming on the market as well. One, a sleeve that we put into the small bowel to sort of bypass food being absorbed in the small bowel, sort of can kind of mimic a gastric bypass. So yes, there's a lot of things that are sort of on the horizon and being studied. But I guess the most common ones that are probably done in the US are the gastric balloon and the endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty.
Now, what is the indication for the gastric balloon and the endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty? Like, what's the BMI people need to?
Yeah. And so most of them will say a BMI over about 28. And if they're on the lower end, they would have comorbidities as well for those. It's a little bit more lenient because most of them are not covered by insurance. And so it doesn't necessarily have to have the comorbidities. If your BMI is like, let's say your BMI is 30 and you don't have sleep apnea or something, you'll still be a candidate for these.
Now, how much weight should people expect to lose with these with the common ones, the gastric balloon and the endoscopic?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with the gastric balloon, it's always hilarious because it's a little bit different of what we see in clinical trials versus what we all see in clinical practice. And the difference for that, we think, is that in the clinical trial, patients don't have to pay for it. So there's not a lot of investment in it. Whereas otherwise, when I see a patient in clinic, they're invested, so they're getting more weight off. So in clinical trials, in the balloons, for example, because the balloon is put in place for 6 months and then removed. And so what we had seen in those studies was about 10 to 12% total body weight loss, which wasn't sort of, a whole lot when you look at sort of the cost of the balloon people go through. But what you see in clinical practice is so much more. So I never see just 10%. And it's really because of the follow-up that we have. So it's making sure patients have follow-up and really teaching patients how to eat. So I tell patients, listen, that is the minimum that we typically will see. And that's what you'll see quoted if I give you a clinical trial paper. But in actual clinical practice, we tend to see a lot more. So you can see a patient lose, 50, 100 pounds with those balloons. But now I have patients that continue to lose when the balloon is gone, because I tell people we don't stop working because the balloon is out. The balloon is sort of to help push you down the hill, and then we keep you rolling even once the balloon is out. With the ESG, a little bit different. There's some 5-year data out now that show that people are able to get off at least, they normally able to get off about 18 to 20%, but then they see at 5 years, people are able to keep off about 15% total body weight loss, 15 to 18%. And that's sort of significant because there's studies when we look at sort of surgical procedures as well, and sort of looking at 5 years and trying to figure out what patients' weight regain rates are and what they're able to keep off after that initial period of weight loss. And to put that into a little bit of perspective, with the gastric bypass, it's quoted people lose about 30 to 35%. And then with the surgical sleeve, people lose about 20 to 25%. So the ESG is less than the surgical sleeve, but still sort of in that same sort of trajectory and category.
And as far as side effects, what are the common side effects that you see with these procedures?
Yes. With the gastric balloon, the big ones that I tell patients about, and sort of why I also will have some sort of relative contraindications as well. But when you will have sort of nausea, you will have heartburn, you will have sort of this feeling of heaviness. And so that's because you're waking up with a balloon that has 500 cc's of fluid in it. So it's heavy. And so yes, you feel it. And so if I have a patient that comes in with chronic IBS symptoms that has chronic abdominal pain daily, even when they don't have anything, they would say they wake up and feel bloated, even if they just have water. These are horrible candidates for this procedure because they're going to feel so much worse. And so those are people that even, not dietary related. These are people that just have actual standing IBS symptoms. Not going to be great candidates. After a balloon, I warn patients, you are going to have these symptoms probably for at least that first week. We're going to get you through it with medications, but it is really about getting over that initial period. You start to feel better and get used to it, but during that first week, that's sort of the worst symptoms. The endoscopic sleeve, although it sounds more invasive to patients, they have less symptoms. So they may have a little bit of nausea that first day or two, but that tends to go away. They don't have near as much heartburn or sort of that feeling of fullness unless they were to overeat, but they may have pain that first night. And so we make sure they give them something to make sure they're to help with the pain that night. But they tend to recover much, much faster than my balloon patients. Balloon patients, imagine, especially I've had people who have small children, so they have to bend over to pick them up. They'll say, oh my goodness, I learned really quickly not to have something to eat and then bend over to pick my kid up because it'll come back up. That's because that balloon is still there and it's slowing your gastric emptying. So the balloon, definitely a lot of nausea, definitely a lot of heartburn with the balloon, and a lot less so with the ESG. With the ESG, people will feel some spasm type symptoms sometimes, which we treat with a medication for that as well. But it's really because the stomach is trying to move and it can't because those sutures are in place. And so, but that goes away a lot quicker too.
Now, you mentioned the recovery for the ESG. Like, what is that usually? Is it like a couple weeks?
Oh, goodness, no. So the patient wake up and they go home the same day. And I always tell them to take off work the next day, just so I'm trying to make sure you're going to get enough fluids in, make sure you're not going to be dehydrated. We need to, put in a different medication for you. But people typically go back to work the following day. So they'll let's say the procedure is on Monday, I'd make them take off for Tuesday, and most of the time I'm back at work on Wednesday. Yeah, so it's a really, really quick recovery.
I know you said that sometimes insurance do not cover these procedures. What's the average cost that people should expect?
Yeah, so it varies across the country just because of varying facility fees and anesthesia fees and that sort of thing. But I would say most of the time the gastric balloon ranges from anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000, and the ESG ranges from anywhere from like $10,000 to $15,000. Most people have payment plans and care credit and financing options. Some people can use health savings account and flexible spending accounts and those sorts of things as well.
Now, what advice do you have for somebody who's considering these procedures? What should they do? What should they know before maybe making that appointment with the specialist?
Good question. So one thing I would say is making sure there is follow-up. I've had patients that have gone other places and recognize that there wasn't a lot of follow-up, or patients that I have seen that have gone other places and they come and they had the procedure done, for example, but didn't have a lot of follow-up. And so they ended up having a repeat procedure with me. And they're like, oh, wow, no one followed up this much. So making sure you need a lot of follow-up. You need some hand holding in the beginning and throughout that process. And so that's one big thing, making sure there's follow-up, making sure that it is someone that has all of those components in that office to sort of help you with fitness, to help you think that I can also offer medications if you reach a weight plateau that will offer you sort of dietary and nutrition sort of counseling, and sort of can give you referrals for social support, all those things that you may need during this journey, because it's an emotional little journey with weight loss. And so patients sometimes find that. And so I think those are sort of big things, and making sure it's somebody you're comfortable with so that you can talk about anything. You don't have to feel shame or guilt about anything at all. You want to feel comfortable. You want to make sure that all the things that you need are going to be met, and you guys are on the same page about your goals.
Well, thank you so much for just breaking down these procedures and just sharing your knowledge. Can somebody work with you?
Of course, they can go to our website. It's www.guttheoryhealth.com. I'm also on social media. Instagram is very easy. Dr._Janice Laster, JANESELASTER.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. If you loved this episode, please share it with others, like it and subscribe, and don't forget to leave a 5-star review, and we will see you all next time.